hope keepers, living to make a difference. And there's nowhere like this, no, there's nowhere like this. And I love and living, lose their teeth. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Handle strong, said I love and living, I'm living local and it's everything to me. We are the believers, we are the hope keepers, living to make a difference. And there's nowhere like this, no, there's nowhere like this. And I love and living, lose their teeth. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Handle strong, said I love and living, I'm living local and it's everything to me. We are the believers, we are the hope keepers, living to make a difference. And there's nowhere like this, no, there's nowhere like this. And I love and living, lose their teeth. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Handle strong, said I love and living, I'm living local and it's everything to me. We are the believers, we are the hope keepers, living to make a difference. And there's nowhere like this, no, there's nowhere like this. And I love and living, lose their teeth. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Handle strong, said I love and living, I'm living local and it's everything to me. We are the believers, we are the hope keepers, living to make a difference. And there's nowhere like this, no, there's nowhere like this. And I love and living, lose their teeth. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Handle strong, said I love and living, I'm living local and it's everything to me. We are the believers, we are the hope keepers, living to make a difference. And there's nowhere like this, no, there's nowhere like this. And I love and living, lose their teeth. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Handle strong, said I love and living, I'm living local and it's everything to me. We are the believers, we are the hope keepers, living to make a difference. And there's nowhere like this, no, there's nowhere like this. And I love and living, lose their teeth. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Handle strong, said I love and living, I'm living local and it's everything to me. We are the believers, we are the hope keepers, living to make a difference. And there's nowhere like this, no, there's nowhere like this. And I love and living, lose their teeth. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Handle strong, said I love and living, I'm living local and it's everything to me. We are the believers, we are the hope keepers, living to make a difference. And there's nowhere like this, no, there's nowhere.
Sounds good.
I think you have arrived at your final destination.
I think so.
You ready? All right. First, I'd like to thank you all for being here. Time is a valuable gift often taken advantage of. I want to tell you something about accountability. It's hard. It hurts. If you're going to do the right thing, it's not always going to be the popular thing. Just a week ago, I stood with Sheriff Ford and my fellow police chiefs. We vowed to our community that any form of excessive use of force, nor any form of brutality, would not be accepted, tolerated, or approved of in any of our departments. As Mr. Tony Bostic said, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Today, I stand before you to say I meant what we said as your law enforcement leaders. As we told you last week, we conduct reviews of all use of force cases. On the afternoon of Monday, June 1st, a use of force review was turned over to me. The words used were, "Chief, you need to watch this." During the review, it was my opinion that one of my employees appeared to have gone too far and acted inappropriately. That conclusion led to contacting a senior state attorney from our state attorney's office. The next morning, I sat with the assistant state attorney while he reviewed the video. As we spoke, we both agreed there was only one thing to do. The officer was immediately placed on administrative leave. I then contacted Sheriff Ford, knowing that I was already going to be at the sheriff's office later on that day. I requested a meeting with Sheriff Ford after the press conference last week. We met in his office where I turned the video over to the sheriff. I asked Sheriff Ford to be the lead agency in conducting a criminal investigation in regards to my employees' actions. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a request no police chief ever wants to make, but this was a request that had to be made. What happened on that day was unacceptable by my terms, and how a citizen was treated was inappropriate. This morning I met with the mother of the gentleman in this case. He had left the house just prior to my arrival there. I hand-delivered them some documentation where all criminal charges against this gentleman were dismissed. I further pledged to his mother that I would lead her in helping get these charges expunged from his criminal record because they do not belong to be there. Folks, I cannot turn back time. I cannot change what happened. All I can do is move forward from here and ensure that we don't make this mistake again. It's a very unfortunate situation that everybody in law enforcement is going to have to deal with now. I can tell you at this point, we're already in the works of scheduling training with the state attorney's office. Our use of force policy is under review. Based on us turning the investigation over to Sheriff Ford, at this time I would like to welcome Sheriff Ford to explain their portion of the investigation.
As a law enforcement officer, this situation embarrasses me and it upsets me, and every officer and deputy that has reviewed this situation feels the same way. It does not represent who we are. I would like to commend Chief Roberts and his assistant chief. I mean, these are very difficult times right now, and these situations are very sensitive. But this shows that our accountability measures work, in that when an officer uses force, they complete a use of force report, and that goes up the chain of command, is reviewed by supervision along with any accompanying evidence and videos. And when they saw that, they saw a problem. But the bottom line here is that we've got a bad stop, an unwarranted stop of an individual walking down the sidewalk just after midnight on the 29th. We've got a bad arrest based on the circumstances that you'll come to learn, as well as a bad use of force. I will say that thankfully the victim in this case is not seriously injured. He had some abrasions, was complaining of some injuries on his back. The officer did deploy a taser. In this case, we don't think that it made full contact. It got stuck in his shirt. We can tell that by the one, he did not go down to the ground after the taser was deployed, and as well as when we hear the taser with a loud clicking sound, that means that it has not made full contact. But again, the actions that were taken were completely inappropriate, and announce today that we've taken former officer Ronnie Nelson with the Springfield Police Department into custody. He's been booked into the Bay County Jail on a felony charge of official misconduct, as well as a misdemeanor charge of battery due to this incident. The basic facts of this case is that Officer Nelson and a recruit officer were patrolling in the area of Highway 98, actually just behind here, on May the 29th, just after midnight, and encountered Solomon Smith walking along the sidewalk. They got out of their patrol vehicle and made contact with him. Mr. Smith recognized that he had done nothing wrong and immediately began questioning why he was stopped. He provided his correct name and date of birth and social security number. The recruit officer took that information to go back to the car while Officer Nelson was conversing with the individual. The recruit officer apparently misheard Mr. Smith's name and came back and asked him why he had given a false name. Mr. Smith then said something to the effect of that's not illegal. That caused Officer Nelson to ask if he had given a false name, to which the recruit mistakenly replied that he had. Officer Nelson immediately pulled out his taser and advised Mr. Smith to turn around and put his hands behind his back. There became a conversation, an argument. Mr. Smith, saying he hadn't done anything wrong. The video will speak to itself on what he said. The officer called for backup. Actually, the recruit officer called for backup. This went on for probably 2 to 3 minutes or more, with the officer telling him to turn around, put his hands behind his back. The backup officer arrived. Officer Nelson deployed his taser again. We don't believe that the taser made full contact. It did strike Mr. Smith, but he did not go down to the ground, and that was about the time that the backup officer arrived, and then he went to put his hands on him and took him to the ground. And again, after reviewing the case, talking with the state attorney's office, and conducting this as a criminal investigation, we obtained arrest warrants for the arrest of Mr. Nelson this morning for official misconduct as well as a battery charge, and he was booked into the Bay County Jail. This is not it's an embarrassing situation. It's an infuriating situation from a law enforcement perspective. But again, we hope that it shows that our accountability measures work when an officer or a deputy does the wrong thing, that they're going to be held accountable. And not an easy situation, but I commend Chief Roberts for moving forward with that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Lucas.
Good afternoon. Together as our law enforcement leadership in Bay County pledged to do the right thing, that they would honor all lives in our community. And there are those who are hearing this press conference who will say, oh, this is just another example of... But I stand here with law enforcement today because they have done the right thing, and the officer involved is seeing the retribution for his actions. This is not the end. As I said last week, this is a next step in a long history. And the actions we're taking today are to heal a history of hurt. It is not easy to stand here. It was not easy to watch the video. And it is not going to be easy to build trust. But that is what we're seeking to do, not only across differences, but also among ourselves. So I say to my community, as a lifelong resident, born when Bay County was segregated and gone into a different direction, today's action signals a new direction. All of us are a part of moving in this new direction and working together to heal the history of hurt. So I stand here with law enforcement, especially with the Northwest Florida Minority Business Chamber of Commerce and Tony Bostic, and I thank you for your untiring diligence in working with law enforcement and with the community, because we have much work to do to build a better Bay County for all, everybody. And that's what we seek to do. So thank you, Chief Roberts and Sheriff Ford, for doing the right thing and setting a new direction and saying that in Bay County, we face our mistakes, we correct them, and we treat people right.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm pleased to be asked to speak at this situation that happened in my city. I'm actually a resident of Springfield, and what I really want to say is that everybody does make mistakes, and these mistakes will be rectified. We've been assured of that. But what really is a point of my emphasis is the kids. And when I say the kids, they're listening, they're watching. So just be cognizant of what you say, be cognizant of what you do, because they're our future, and we don't want to contaminate their minds with things that will be resolved at some point. Change will come. I promise you, change will come. So just be cognizant of what you say around the kids. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. On the 2nd of this month, the Northwest Florida Minority Business Chamber of Commerce and the League Coalition of Bay County stood before you partnering with the law enforcement agencies of our great county and the FDLE as they took a unified stance against the actions that led to the death of Mr. George Floyd. We stood with them as they explained their agency's use of force policies and pledged to provide and maintain openness and accountability for their agencies. Since that news conference, we have worked diligently with each agency on incidents that have impacted them, including the incident which you have just been briefed. Each agency has worked extremely hard with us within the constraints of Statute 112 to be as open as legally possible, and they have demonstrated the accountability they pledged through their immediate actions in the aftermath of each incident. We have urged the citizens to remain calm, trust the process, and allow the leadership of these agencies the time and opportunity to righteously resolve each incident. And so today, we continue to stand with our local law enforcement agencies as they continue this process. We also continue to ask that you continue to demonstrate the calm resolve which you have exhibited during this past week. The moral arc of our country and our county is changing. We invite and encourage each citizen of our great community to be a part of that change. Again, the Northwest Florida Minority Business Chamber of Commerce, the League Coalition of Bay County, and other representatives from our communities, ask that you continue to remain calm and peaceful as you exercise your right to affect positive change in our community and our society. We also thank our law enforcement leaders for being true to their commitment to do what is right and just for the citizenry of Bay County. Chief Roberts and Sheriff Ford, thank you for your commitment to justice, and we stand with you. Thank you.
Are we going to do interviews this way, or can we do them separately? Do you want to do them in the press conference like this, or separately?
So I wanted to get back up to the podium.
I can't speak on defending criminal charges.
We can do it separately too.
Separately? Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right.
Cheryl, do you want to do the...
Yeah.
We are the hope keepers.